I'm super excited about the dish that we're cooking today. It's a coffee sous vide pork belly with caramelised onion puree and rhubarb. So I've been thinking about it for a while. We're finally going to get the chance to make it, so let's get into it. Okay, so I've got my pork belly. This is the one that we chose. It was brined in coffee and then cooked in coffee, and this one was just a plain piece that we cooked in coffee. So this one had the best flavour. You couldn't really get the coffee flavour, but it actually had a better depth of flavour. So to get this one going, we need to start with the onions. These are already peeled, and then we just need to chop them up, put them in a pan, and then cook them down really slowly. So you don't want any colour, you just want them to cook and cook over for quite a long period of time. And then we can add some butter to the pan, get a really nice dark golden colour, and then we add some cream, cook the cream down a little bit, and then we blitz it to a really smooth puree. So that will go on the base of the plate, and it's just an awesome puree. So fire up the heat, in with a bit of olive oil, and then once they actually start to fry, we turn the heat down, and then we can just leave those on the back burner until later we can add some butter, and then we can just get that really nice golden colour on them. Okay, next up is the baby onions. So you can see that these are like, there's some dirt on the outside, but we're going to leave the skin on, and that's going to protect them when they cook. So all I want to do with these is trim off the bottom, so the root is nice and clean. You can hear that there's some heat in this pan now, so I'm just going to turn that down. Just make sure it's all broken up, so you can get a nice even cook on those. So just take the root off and then cut them through the middle. So, and it's not through the root, it's actually through the middle. So you're going to have one piece that's held together by the root, and then the other one is going to have the tips on. So clean the root. And then through the middle. So the oven is preset at 180. I can go in the pan with some oil, and then flat side down, I'm just going to put these into the pan. So we want to get a nice bit of colour on them, and then they can go into the oven. Just use oil, olive oil or canola, sunflower, whichever you like, and then get a decent amount of colour on those, and then just straight into the oven. And then they're probably going to take about 25-30 minutes to get really soft. So they're pretty flexible on the cook time, so you really don't have to worry too much about overcooking them, because you want them really soft, and pretty much the longer you cook them, the sweeter they're going to become. So just a nice bit of colour on those, and while that's doing its thing, for the rhubarb, what I want to do is I'm going to keep my my battens, and then we're going to juice what's remaining, all these offcuts, and then we're going to cook our battens in that juice. So we want them all to be pretty much the same size, so when they're like that, you pretty much got split that one down the middle, so it keeps a consistent size. So how are these looking? They're starting to colour. So once they've got a really nice, consistent, even colour on them, then we'll put them into the oven. So, and I might actually throw some stock into the pan as well. So I've got those. Let's just make some of these up. Just keep the pieces really consistent. Just take the tops off. It will be 3 pieces per portion, so there's a couple left over, and then we can juice this and cook these pieces in its juice. So Don't worry if they look like they're burnt, they'll be fine. I'm actually gonna put a touch of stock in there. And then they can go straight into the oven. I've got my even pieces of rhubarb. That one probably can be split down the middle. And then we're going to go straight into the juicer with this. It didn't make too much, but it will be enough. There's 150 mils there. So what I'm going to do is, I think a bit of maple syrup would work really well with the coffee and the pork. So and then this is quite sharp. So we're going to put these in the pan, bring that maple syrup and get a really nice glaze. And then to cut the heat of the pan, we just pour this in and cook it down. It will create a nice syrup. And by that point, these guys should be cooked. Just gonna check on the onions, and you can see they're starting to soften now, cooking gently. It's as low as it will go. So we get those down a little bit more, just cook those down a little bit more, and then we can add some butter in there. So, and then that butter is gonna give it that really nice golden color. We'll put some chicken stock in, reduce it until it's completely dry, in with the cream, cook it down by half, and then we'll blitz it and pass it through a sieve. Okay, so my onions are starting to color on the bottom of the pan. So they are not far off before we'll be adding some butter. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get these ready for when we come to plate up. So you'll want to cook them to the point. You don't want them to go too soft, otherwise they will just like blister. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with a touch of oil to start with. You can just start to get them cooking. It's pretty much just blistering the skin, in with a touch of maple syrup. A bit more than a touch there, but, and then you're going to see it's going to bubble up. And that will give it a nice glaze when we cook down our rhubarb juice. So as soon as you start to see, or if you start to see it burning, then pour that juice in, and that will stop the sugars caramelizing. And then we can just leave these cook down in their juice. So they won't take too long. And just make sure that they don't overcook, because you really don't want that blistering. So if it looks like they are going to, then we can just take them out and then reduce the liquid that's left into a syrup. So the onions are looking good. So I'm going to drop in some butter. There's probably, how much is that? 125. It's probably about 40 grams. Of butter there that can go into the pan. So the smaller ones are actually ready already. Good. They've got a touch of bite to them, so by the time we reheat them, they'll be bang on. So that was super quick. And then this liquid, we can just cook it down until it's a nice syrup. Yeah. And then we can just reserve this syrup, and we might use this later on when it comes to putting it on the plate. I'm not too sure. Now we've added the butter, I'm going to turn up the heat slightly just to get them going. All these bits at the bottom, just make sure that they that you scrape those off the bottom and then mix it into it, and that will be the like even caramelization over the onions. I'll just check on my baby onions, and the stock is pretty much all evaporated. So you can see that they're really soft and nicely caramelized. So they're looking good, so they can just sit on the back there. And then my onions are really starting to get a nice color on now. So they won't be too far off. So I'm just gonna grab my pork and then skin side down, put them in a cold pan. And the heat's not on because we're going to do it in the oven. So they can go in, straight in. And I'm going to set the timer for about 22 minutes and then we'll see how they are. Okay, so with the onions, we're just going to pull the outer couple of layers off. Nicely. Jus, you can even finish them in the jus, give them a nice glaze. So back to the onions, see that they've got a really nice colour on now, and it's going to be pretty difficult to take them much further. So there's definitely enough colour and caramelisation on those. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of stock. Just cook that down. And then when that's come down a little bit, we add the cream. Okay, so my chicken stock has pretty much reduced. There's hardly anything in there. So I'm going to go in with my cream. Just going to go in with just over half of it. So that's a 300ml pot. So it's probably about 175. It's going to bring this to the boil, cook it down slightly, and then we're going to go into the liquidizer and then we're going to check its consistency. So after that we either reduce it more or add a little bit of chicken stock to thin it down, or we might just be lucky and it will be on point. Just putting my onions on the tray ready for the oven. Gonna season these, and then my puree is also ready, so we can go straight into the blender with my puree. Just get everything out of here so there's nothing left behind. And then lid on and blend. Okay, so once we've pureed the onions, just going to, it looks pretty smooth, but just to be sure, I'm going to pass it through a sieve. Make sure we get everything. When you spend so long cooking down the onions, you don't want to waste any of it. So That's actually a pretty good consistency. So I'm not going to do anything with that. That will be good. Check its seasoning. Man, that's good. Touch of salt. So the pork's got a couple of minutes on it. So plates up. They can go into the oven to warm through. Just take a minute, and then when they come out, we're going to put the onions and rhubarb in. Let's just heat up the puree. And then the plates can come up. They're just warm enough. And then these things can go in for, they're only going to take about 1 minute to heat through. So they'll be really quick, especially the rhubarb because of the sugar content. So just make sure this doesn't catch. So just keep it on the move while it comes up to temperature. And then we're ready to plate. Onions are ready, rhubarb's ready, and the pork is looking good. So we've got our onion puree here, which is a nice consistency. So I'm going to start with, I've got 2 different pieces here. I've got one larger piece and then an intermediate course piece, so like a multi-course piece. So I'm going to do the big one first over here. And we can just run through that. The belly, it's got nice colour on it. Can sit to the left of the centre. We normally do go in 3s. Just put that there. Let's put that there too. Swipe. A nice piece of pork belly can sit in the middle of that. Just gonna one of my onions up there. Another here. It's the rhubarb. Just sit there. And then just a little bit of watercress. So I've made this one quite delicate, so I won't put too many pieces on it. So okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. So now it's time for the taste test. So a bit of rhubarb, a bit of onion. Oh, those onions are soft. Where's it gone? Rhubarb, onion, and then puree. That's got a great balance of flavour because you have like the acidity from the rhubarb, then you get the sweetness of the onion, and the pork belly is really soft, so it's held its shape quite nicely. So that was 6 hours at 86, was it? So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think maybe with the rhubarb, maybe put a touch of balsamic glaze or something else just to cut through that acid. The maple syrup didn't quite do it. So yeah, I'm overall pretty happy with that, and it would definitely make the menu. So if you actually decide to give it a go, make sure you post your photos of it down in the comments. I'd love to see them. And if you like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that stuff. And until the next video, have a good one.